That's why, back to the unlearning. What's
Mm.
important for me? Once I worked with a coach, a life coach,
Mhm.
she helped me set boundaries with my daughter because when my daughter was born, I was like, I don't exist anymore. It's just
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
I don't have any more needs. It's just her. And my coach was like, yeah, that's not going to work. I was like,
Yeah.
really? It's okay to be a mom and have needs? Is it
Yeah.
okay? She gave me permission, So that's what I also want to do is give other people permission to claim their needs and not be labeled bad person, bad
Yeah.
mother.
Emerge Coaches Interview is a series focused on showcasing the expertise, process, and methodology of exceptional coaches or vetted individuals who are experts in various aspects of life. Our mission is to empower all of you who may be struggling in life by demonstrating that help is readily available. We want to serve as a bridge, connecting those in need with skilled coaches who can offer effective strategies and proven techniques for personal growth and transformation. By showcasing the success stories and insight of these exceptional coaches, we aim to convey the message that regardless of the challenges you may face, there are always ways to overcome and emerge stronger. Our guest today is Wendy, aka Kazane, an energy healer, mentor, and a coach based in Cebu, Philippines. She's a student of Bushido, the path of the samurai, and studying for her PhD in clinical psychology from University of Philippines, Diliman. Her mission is to empower people to become their own best healer and master through energy, meditation, plant meditation, and movement, among other modalities. Wendy, thank you so much for being here today. It's really a pleasure for me. How are you feeling right now?
I'm feeling well. Thank you, Gladys, for inviting me. And I'm looking forward to having our, as you mentioned earlier, first one on one conversation.
Exactly. Now, I know that you've already been interviewed in Emerge Stories where we get a glimpse of your backstory, the struggle that you've gone through in life, and how you respond to them that I think are really powerful and inspiring for other people. Now, this time with Emerge Coaches interview, what we're diving into is your expertise, and maybe you could share some stories of people who've emerged to become better by joining you in some of your methodologies and practice that you've shared with them. So I would love for us to dive deep into the things that you love to do in helping people. So thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to interview you today.
Thank you,
And
Gladys.
yeah, now, before we go to your backstory, I just want to ask, what are some of the ways that you enjoy helping other people?
Mm. There might be some overlap with my conversation with Eli, but
Mhm.
basically the way this path of mine happened was I feel like I responded to a call. So it wasn't me seeking to become a coach or a healer. It was more like when I started learning how to do energy healing, people wanted to learn from me. And
Mm.
so they were asking, I want to take your class. I want to take your class. And I was like, I'm not teaching, I'm just offering, until it came a point where it's like, okay, there's obviously a need, for people to learn and go deeper. And that's when I decided to continue my energy healing studies to guide people into practicing and learning it so they could do it for themselves. Eventually my students became also teachers and healers, and they have their own communities here in Cebu. They're teaching energy healing here in Cebu. So it's kind of happened very organically, very, very organically. Yeah. It's not like, oh, I want to be a life coach and I'm going to
Mm.
take this, online course and do it. No, it was like
Mm.
so many twists and turns, so many like different avenues and side trips and things like that.
That's nice. It's like you're you're doing it basically for yourself, and people see you and they wanted to learn from you. And I just want to know, what is energy healing?
Yeah. So what happened was I was suffering, I was kind of on a verge of a burnout in 2015. I had my first business in Cebu. I moved here with my family from Switzerland 2013. We had a restaurant. My first business, venture into the food industry, new to the city. And after 2 years, it was like I just needed a reset. And so
Mm-hmm.
I decided to go on a week-long trip to Angkor Wat with my daughter, was about 10 at the time. And for me, it was kind of a touristic trip at the time. I wasn't thinking, oh, it's going to be spiritual or anything. I just thought Angkor Wat was nice because it's like away from a kind of a
Mm.
mall. It's not all about consumption and capitalism for my kid. And while I was in Siem Reap, the town beside Angkor Wat in Cambodia, for those you haven't been there, they were offering Reiki sessions, and so I got very
Mm.
curious. I didn't know what Reiki was, and I just researched very briefly and found out that you could send this healing to people over distance, and so I wanted to send it to my mom who lives in the States. And so she and I had been apart for a while, and I felt like it was a really good way to connect. It wasn't even for me. It's like, oh,
Mm.
my mom's always having these throat issues. I'm going to send her Reiki. And so I learned the class. And of course, I got so much more than what I was expecting. Yes, I did send some to my mom, but 2 years after that, I opened the Gasho Center for Healing Arts, which was a wellness center in Cebu City. It had its doors open for about 2 years. So that the whole idea behind energy healing is that we're tapping into the energetic component of our being. So most of
Mm.
the time, we're focused so much on physicality, on 3D, whether it's resources, building businesses, getting fit, going to the gym, eating well. But we sometimes leave out that component, which is the energetic component. And just to give you an example, it's like when people, let's say, have a tumor, a cancer
Mm.
tumor, and then eventually grows back, that in my worldview is because the energetic work hadn't been done. So
Mm.
yes, the tumor, the physical 3D, you can look in the microscope. It was removed through surgery, but the energetic template was not healed. So that involves emotional work. It involves maybe past life work. It involves
Mm.
healing trauma on different levels. So the reason I'm also now taking my clinical psychology course is another layer that I'm adding. So there's that talk therapy and then the mental processes, right? So everything, we're
Mhm.
so complex as beings, we're so multifaceted, and having a holistic approach is really coming in from the different sides and like, okay, everyone is different. So let's find the right ingredients for each person. And maybe this cocktail of energy healing and talk therapy and going to the gym and eating this keto, whatever, that's going to work. And it's going to look different for everyone, which is why you can't have a healer fix someone. It's more
Mm.
like giving that person the tools and then they figure it out because it's a daily
Exactly.
process. It's for me, it's like what I need today is different from what I'm going to need tomorrow, and then being mindful enough to and humble, having the humility to say, I'm going to need to rest today. Like
Mm.
maybe me, I tend to pack my schedule and then at the end, and then my body's going to complain or I'm not. And then, I'm going to be like, okay, what about putting more rest? And so sometimes we need, especially as women, right? We have a monthly
Mhm.
cycle. And when we start slowing down enough to honor that cycle through meditation, through journaling, through,
Mhm.
cacao ceremony, then we create more harmony and that flow of energy can be more easeful. Wow, that
Wow.
was wonderful.
Well, I never really understood what Reiki is. I only have a little bit of idea that it's one way of like healing something in your body through energy, but I didn't know that you could actually tap into different modalities as well
Mm.
with Reiki. And yeah, I've started doing energy work as well, like aligning my chakra and all of that. And I feel like it helped me to be grounded, like to just stay still, and it helped me to improve my meditation practice better. Kind of really
Okay, so
notice. Yeah.
Reiki there's so many different types of energy healing.
Mm-hmm.
Reiki is a specific protocol that a Japanese master Usui sensei 100 years ago kind of downloaded after his 21-day meditation and fasting on Mount Kurama. And so he came up with a system that would allow people to get rid of like a lot, like cleanse their energy field so that it's lighter. So that's why it's so popular. I think it's because it's conveniently packaged, it's easy to teach. So there's a kind of a Western style of Reiki that just focuses on the hands healing. But over the past few years, I've been diving into a kind of like a more traditional Japanese type of Reiki, which involves really more on like a lifestyle and a philosophy, which is why I'm studying Bushido, the path of the samurai. The creator of Reiki came from a samurai lineage where there's a lot of non-attachment, so like dropping the drama, like that's all part of the process. Letting go of attachment to things like where you live, what you eat, like all of these things.
Yeah, that sounds complex, but if you can actually, like, if I want to be introduced to Reiki, like, I want to learn that, how will I start it? How does the journey looks like?
There's a lot of like books. People often ask me for books, but I'm usually kind of like weary to recommend books because Reiki is very experiential. Energy healing is experiential. So meaning to say you can read about, it's like reading about, you've never had like chocolate in your life and you just read, like 10 volumes about it. It's not going to replace the experience, right? So it's the same thing with Reiki. Of course, I could recommend some books if people ask me. Now, I do regularly have kind of discovery sessions. Like actually I have one on I don't know when this is coming out, but I have one in a few days. That's a free online call. So people can I talk a little bit about it. I lead them into a guided meditation. And I also have classes. So for the first level means you don't need any experience. You can be like a total noob and just show up to class and kind of learn the very, very basics of how to start practicing Reiki. So that is, I have one in Cebu at the end of August, and I regularly have them, online as well. So those are the best ways to get started, because people are like, oh, I've been doing Reiki like on TikTok or YouTube. I can't like vouch for those. That's not how I was taught. Reiki, you have to be kind of having a personal intention because the receiver has to acknowledge and actively receive in a sense. So I don't know. I mean, if it works for people, then that's well and good. I don't know if I would call it, original Reiki, but yeah, whatever works.
So if you're actually, because you said you can send healing to other people, it's not just all about a healing for yourself. But in order for that to work, the person needs to be aware and are willing to receive it.
Well,
Is that
first of all,
correct?
they usually you need the person's express permission. You don't just like, people would come and say, "Can you send Reiki to my uncle? He's in the hospital." But the person that uncle is very like closed off to Reiki and is not willing to accept it, then you can't go against his will.
All right.
That's why I feel like the word healing it's kind of a misnomer. It's not really healing. It's just like getting access to this universal life force energy once a person expressively accepts it. Yeah.
I see. That's good to know. And one thing I want to ask as well, I know that you've, got interested in Reiki because of your mom, like you wanted to send healing to your mom. But if you can also share, like, other than that, what led you to dig deeper into Reiki and really now doing what you do, like creating courses and helping more people?
So the whole process of, for me, when you start taking Reiki, people think they're learning a self-healing tool or a healing modality, but it's really much more than that. You're actually starting on a journey of self-knowing. So when we say we're clearing the chakras, we're actually getting rid of a lot of layers of kind of conditioning. And then eventually we start uncovering our real self. And part of our true self is our purpose. So my belief is we all incarnated for a specific purpose. And there's no rush to find it out, right? I remember when I was younger, I was very frustrated. I would hear maybe like, some teachers talk about their purpose, finding even about having a spiritual practice, and I didn't have one. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
my purpose, and it used to trigger me. So it took some time till I was able to little by little uncover my purpose. And then that's part of the whole process of letting go of other people's expectations, letting go of, even until now, I still have to check in on that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I still sometimes judge myself for what I didn't achieve, right? Which is like, I teach my own students that that's not their real value. Intrinsically, we're all
Mm-hmm.
divine. We're all like of infinite value, but sometimes we fall back into our old habits. And so
Right.
Reiki is it's like a cleansing. And that's why the more often we can do it, like brushing your teeth, people say, how many sessions do I need? And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you don't just go brush your teeth once, right? It's like
Yeah.
the more you can do it, the more you get rid of a lot of what starts to pollute our energy system from our environment, from our own thoughts, from our ancestral trauma. There's really so much. And it's also important to acknowledge that the more you unpack, the more also comes up.
Mm, yeah,
Almost like,
that's true.
yeah, it's like it's not a quick fix
Mm,
where, oh, I'm going to take this modality, and then everything's going to be like wonderful and rainbows and butterflies.
mm,
No, like I'm going to uncover this thing. Then there's like this thing called shadow work that's going to come up, which is all those aspects of myself and my family and my bloodline, and even as a human that were too scary or icky to look at. They're going to come up
yeah.
so I can finally face them, acknowledge them, and transmute them. So this is all, but that's why there are different levels on Reiki. You can start with the first one, see how that feels for you. So obviously, I have less students who go to level 2. Like I have hundreds and hundreds of students who took level 1. And then many of them, wow, okay, they're ready to dive into it. Some of them are not so much. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them are happy with that first level. Then like I said, the deeper you go, the more it's like you can't live the same way you used to live, right?
Yeah,
It's like
for sure.
it's almost like plant medicine without the plant medicine. It's like you start getting
Yeah.
glimpses of something of a greater consciousness and reality that, like, okay, wait a minute, like what's real, what how do I can't go back to
Mm, exact. I totally agree with that. It feels like when I started, first for me, it's meditation that I started. And I was so surprised, like, oh my God, I just noticed how much thought I'm having in my mind. And then eventually noticing that I could just close my eyes and not have any thoughts at all for like 20
good for
minutes.
you. That's very
Yeah.
difficult to do.
Yeah.
Not
So
every
so when I just realized that when I did a meditation next to a friend of mine and when we exchange our experience, I was like, oh, I'm not seeing any visual. I'm not having any thoughts. It's just like blank space and I'm just feeling my body. So it was fascinating for me. And then just learning more about self-reflection. But then I reached this point where I feel weird about myself because there are moments where I am talking to someone, but at the same time, I'm observing the way I talk, the energy, the tone of my voice. And there's this another voice in the back of my head where I feel like, I don't like how you talk right now. It sounds very judgmental, it's very critical, and those kind of things. And it felt weird to be observing yourself doing something at the same time and then going back to my family in that same space and not being able to connect with them and also noticing that I'm judging the people around me just because we're not talking the same. I couldn't relate to the chismes thing that they're doing, so now I'm judging them, but I don't like that I'm judging them. So those were the time of my life where part of me feels like I just want to go back to the same old self where I don't really care about this thing or I don't even notice about this thing and I can just live blinded. But then it's like autopilot. And honestly, I could slip back to that, but eventually I realized like this is not really the kind of life I will go. So I'm going back to this more deep self reflection. But as you said, as you go deeper, it gets even harder and harder. And there's a lot of things that would emerge in those process. So,
I feel like it gets harder, but we also have more capacity to
mm,
face. It's not like it gets harder and
Yeah.
I mean, ideally, we want to, that's why there's a process. That's why it's
Mm,
important to have a teacher, actually. People who take a too big a leap without a foundation, they can really suffer,
yeah.
mentally. Yeah. So I'm not going to go into detail about that,
Mm-hmm.
but that's why don't be in a hurry. If you
Mm,
jump some stages, it's going to be more difficult. Yeah. So yeah, that's all
yeah.
I'll say about that.
Yeah, no, I actually want to understand more of that. There are people who really feel stuck right now. They don't like the way, the way they're acting, their anger issue, or they always feel stressed and depressed. And most of them just want a quick fix. Like, I just want to take that and I want this and I expect this to really fix me right away. But what would you say to those people who wanted to actually be in a state of happy state and fulfilling state?
Well, that's part of the unlearning that we have to do.
Mm,
Or it's kind of an incorrect view that we can take a quick fix, right? So they're bound to create more suffering just by that desire, right? So the sooner we realize that it's a process and there's no end goal and the journey is the goal, those sound so cliche, but it's really important. Letting go of expectation. That's why, yeah, good luck to you if you're going to go into plant ceremony expecting it'll fix everything. Plant ceremony is just going to show you a glimpse of another reality, another version of you that you can tap into if you do the inner work daily, consistently, with discipline, with devotion.
mhm,
It doesn't replace the work. That's where people are mistaken. And it takes a lot of courage and determination to get unstuck. And some people don't have that. And again, that's why we have free will, right?
mm,
So I think it's important for those of us who are on that path, on the path of, we decided to take this path, to accept those who haven't made that decision. So, I
right.
just to address that piece on judgment. Of course, you also we're talking about reactivity, acknowledging that we're actually all one, but at different stages. And so
Mm,
kind of having that compassion for ourselves through others. And we've been there. Maybe in lifetimes we were stuck,
yeah.
and over this lifetime, we decided to really roll up our sleeves and do the work to get unstuck. So, acknowledging that is important. Also, you're talking about your family members. I like to remind people that my belief is we choose our families
Mhm,
or we incarnate for the precise areas that need to be worked on, precise lessons that need to be worked. So whether they're learning to set boundaries, learning to be experience
mm,
unconditional love, learning to experience forgiveness, not only do we select our families, but in one of the downloads I got actually while I was in Japan was that we select our neuroses.
neurosis. I don't know that word.
Neurosis, it's a mental illness like depression, anxiety,
Mm,
all of these. So we actually select that, like almost like before we incarnate, we get a checklist,
mm,
like, do I want to be a girl? Do I want to be a boy? Do I want to be like, whatever, white, black? And do I want to be like, whatever, serial killer? Like we just check to have our own kind of experiences. So parang that gives a framework of, okay, if that's the case, like, who am I to judge? We're all
mm,
here. We're all on the same team. It's
exactly.
what we have to remind ourselves.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that because I noticed myself slipping into that pattern of judgment, and then I would judge myself for judging other people.
Of course, yeah. That's
Yeah.
why again, Reiki is helpful because a lot of it is stuck energy.
Mm,
It's heavy. So it helps us to be like, okay, I'm judging myself or
mm,
I'm judging others, I'm judging myself. And then instead of getting it of sticking there, right? We're talking about getting unstuck. We can use Reiki, we can use breath work or whatever to kind of like let it go, let it go, let it go. And then just deal with that one day at a time, one issue at a time, one emotion at a
mhm.
time. That's why again, we can't expect, oh, we're gonna be like this holy person all of a sudden and like not make any wrong decisions and mistakes and judgments. I judge all the time. But now I catch myself. In the
Mm,
past, I probably did it without knowing. So now it feels like it's more salient, but it's only because I'm so much more sensitive and aware. And I'm like, oh, okay. So, let's see where that goes. And I can make a choice.
Mm.
Like, oh, I had this judgmental thought. Like, am I gonna hold on to it? Am I gonna, let it go? Am I gonna what am I gonna do with it? We have more freedom with that awareness and
Mm.
that mindfulness. And the discomfort that you mentioned, it goes away eventually.
Yeah,
Like I've
that's
had to accept that, like being a black sheep and people not being able to engage in those conversations. At first, it's awkward, and then after a while,
Mm.
it's like, honestly, I'm intentional with the type of happiness that I create, and like I don't feel like I'm missing out anymore. But
Mhm.
maybe that comes with time as well. It's like, yeah, I have so much fun alone, Gladys. Like,
Mm.
I mean, I'm a very social person, but like I don't. It's so I also really really enjoy what I'm able to do by myself. I don't miss the drama of the chismes and all that. Like so these are all phases that we go through:
Mhm.
acceptance and self love, and then intention.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing those expectation for people that, it's not a quick fix. It's going to be a journey. And I think for me, it's a beautiful journey. I know there are times where I'm being very critical about myself. Like, I know that I have to change my state. I know that I'm being judgmental right now, but I'm resisting inside of me. So I'm creating that anxiety and overwhelm eventually for myself. So
The fact
it's
that you're
new.
aware of that, that's already giving you so much power.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, just sit with that and like give yourself some credit. You can celebrate the fact that you're aware of all of these things, right? Like as humans, we're meant to be experiencing this whole wide spectrum of emotions. And so hold yourself as you hold your children, in comfort as they make mistakes, as they grow and learn, right? You have to do the same to yourself.
Uh, thank you. Thank you so much, Randy, for saying that. And it just reminds me of this time that I notice it. I notice a pattern every time I'm in my menstrual cycle where I get very sensitive. And Eli just told me, like, how about you just acknowledge that there are days in the months where you get overly sensitive and volatile and just accept that. Because I feel like you're trying to fight
Divided.
within yourself that no, I can control myself. It's not about my period. But it is actually powerful to just acknowledge and to embrace that it
Yeah.
happens,
Yeah.
because then it allows me to pay more attention to my reaction, like, I'm extra sensitive right now, like, so yes, there's freedom in awareness, and thank you for stating
And
that.
and also I want to acknowledge that, you have the support of a partner who's aware of that. Because think of all the women who have a unsupportive partner, right? And
Yeah.
that would just lead to a huge, probably a fight, right?
Yeah.
And so I can relate with that. Like I'm 49, so I'm gonna be 50 in January. And recently I was visiting my daughter. She's 21 and she's very, very I love her so much. We're super, super close, but she's very feisty. And
Mm.
and so we're so reactive. I'm an air sign, she's a fire sign. And so there were a few days when I was with her, like we would trigger each other all the time. And I
Mm.
was feeling so sensitive about little things. And I'm like, okay, it's driving me insane. And so I'm like, oh, I think this might be, I'll Google like perimenopause or something. It's like, oh, mood
Mm.
swings. I'm like, I'm having these mood swings. So almost like naming it, it's kind of like, okay, you're having these mood swings, just like our menstrual cycle, hormonal shifts,
Mhm.
like it's okay to have these hormonal shifts and it's not gonna last.
Mm.
Giving yourself time, like how can I soothe myself through the mood swing? Right? How
Right.
can I do something? Let me make some cacao. Let me go, I don't know, watch a rom-com. Like, let me just like kind of ride that wave.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's the beauty of realizing and just accepting that, okay, I'm going to have some mood swings at this time. So, what are the things that I could actually do to help myself, to ease myself in
Yeah.
those days? So, that would open you to looking at other, you
Yeah.
know, ways to go about it. That's
And also
beautiful.
when you're at your best, you can be like, okay, like no, enjoying that moment, but also kind of like maybe making a commitment to loving yourself when you're not in that good place.
Mm, yeah, I
You
think
know,
that's
like
very
sending love to
powerful.
your future self. So
Ah,
The beautiful thing with Reiki is you can send it not only remotely, but also through time.
mm,
So it bridges time and space. So you can almost like send Reiki to your future hormonal self and be like, okay, this is to soothe you through this difficult time where you're feeling like you want to break everything or eat a pint of ice cream or something. Yeah. So you can do that, just with intention as well.
wow, that makes me even more curious and interested with Reiki because I really believe, as you said, human as we are, we're very complex being. And I figure out a way to feel good physically by working out. It works for me. And also I figure out a way to how can I connect more with my partner?
Mhm.
But there are things in myself where like if I'm very down, if I'm overwhelmed or like I get stuck and I run to try to eliminate those energy. I meditate, I journal, but some of those things doesn't really work. So it's nice to have a lot of different options or what do you
I
call
think
that?
also allowing ourselves to feel down at
Mm,
certain times. It's like, okay, today I'm just going to indulge in feeling really, really, just really shitty. And, hopefully after, so for me, I used to go into these moods that would
mm,
last for days. And then when I started practicing, it just got, practicing Reiki and meditation,
mhm.
yoga, it got shorter. So maybe from 3 days it becomes 2 days and one day. Then next thing you know, it's like 2 hours. So that's what we want to do. Not, like, yes, there are going to be those times, but they're going to be, we can manage the intensity, we can manage the length, right?
I think I'm learning something right now. It's so much more into my resistance and really wanting to shift right away. Like,
Right
okay, now
away.
yeah.
Yeah. So you're
And
actually, the pushback is going to increase the pressure.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. That's what's happening.
So just like open the valve and then, okay, like, whatever you need to do and feel it's okay to really, really feel awful and hopeless. And, I, that happens to me. And the best thing is to allow it. Like, hey, I can't take it today. I want to give up. Like you can say those things. It's okay.
Thank you for reminding me of that. I need to, allow myself to just feel down the moment because I really feel like me beating myself because like I'm telling myself, I know I can meditate. I know there are other ways for me to shift, but it's
Mhm.
just not working. So maybe if I could just let myself and be more compassionate with myself during those moments, I think that would
And
actually
allow
help me.
yourself times of weakness. That's why, I get so triggered when people say like, strong, independent women and like
Mm,
always strong. And I think that's great, but I don't want people to think we always have to be these strong,
yeah.
independent women. That's for me, that's toxic. So I do
Mm,
get triggered when people say that. It's like, no, I'm human. I can be strong, I can be weak. I can be independent. I can also
mhm.
be interdependent. I want to depend on a partner. Like I'm single at the
Yeah.
moment, but I want to be able to depend on a partner. I don't want to be, like strong, independent all the time, all my life to
Yeah.
like that, I want to be vulnerable and weak and sometimes like cry on the bathroom floor or whatever, like I'm allowed to. I claim that, right? And
Mhm.
that doesn't make me less valuable, less lovable, less of a teacher, less of a friend, right? Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of vulnerability, I always thought that, holding your tears is a sign of strength, but actually to allow yourself to cry in front of other people and to be vulnerable with your feeling, it takes a lot of courage. And for you to be able to do that, that's also a strength, that you're showing strength to allow yourself to. you vulnerable. So now I'm seeing that
Yeah,
opposite.
yeah, yeah.
Now
I'm
going
glad
back.
I'm glad that that this is resonating for you. And I think it's so relevant for most women and mothers,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
Like a lot of us are projected this ideal of the super mother. I went through that, single mom working for a time. I had after having postpartum depression, and I just couldn't keep that image that I wanted to project together. I Everything had to be perfect. I had
Yeah.
to look perfect. The food for my daughter had to be perfect. The house had to be perfect. My work had to be for like no, like that is just a recipe for deep, deep burnout and depression and disaster. Like no one should expect that of anyone. And we all expect that of ourselves, just right,
Yeah.
or many women expect that for themselves. Why? Because of that, what society is asking for us. That's why, back to the unlearning. What's
Mm,
important for me? Once I worked with a coach, a life coach.
mhm.
She helped me set boundaries with my daughter because when my daughter was born, I was like, I don't exist anymore. It's just
Yeah.
her.
Yeah.
I don't have any more needs. It's just her. And my coach was like, yeah, that's not gonna work. I was like,
Yeah.
really? It's okay to be a mom and have needs? Is it
Yeah.
okay? Like, she gave me permission. So that's what I also want to do is give other people permission to claim their needs and not be labeled bad person, bad
Yeah.
mother.
I love that you mentioned about that because I resonate with it so much. I can relate with it. And I really feel like a lot of mother just automatically loses themselves and thinking like, okay, now I'm a mother. I just have to give everything that my child needs. And if I think of myself, that's selfish. I
Yeah.
was feeling a lot of that. I want to buy clothes for myself, but then I'm
Mm.
like, I could just buy clothes for my kids. Like it would be too selfish to treat myself. And it took me a long time, maybe just for the past 2 years, I started like embracing and actually getting something for myself. Because every time I would go to a shopping center, I would try on things. I would feel so heavy. At first, I feel excited, and then I'm like, this is too selfish. Let me get something for my kids instead.
Yeah.
So it's so nice, and I really wish and hope for mothers out there to prioritize themselves because I feel like if you're happy, if you're in that happy state, you can even be better mother to your
Mm.
kids, to your children. And there's no resentment because I noticed back in the days, part of me is also resenting being a
Of
mother.
course. Yeah. Yeah. I think I
Like,
posted something once that was like when you keep over giving out of obligation, it builds resentment. Yeah.
mm,
It's not a nice offering. Nobody's gonna benefit.
exactly. Now, I want to transition back to Reiki and I want to understand the process and the methodology that you actually do to your student. Like you said, there's different levels of Reiki. So, what does a Reiki level one looks like?
Sure. Okay, so different levels of Reiki. Yeah. So, like I mentioned, Reiki level one is when you have no experience whatsoever and you kind of you're introduced to the protocol. So, the
Mm,
way the level one is conducted is there's a manual that each Reiki master teacher is encouraged to write. And then we go over some theory like the history of Reiki, the energy system, the different hand positions, the protocols. And then we have what's called a Reiju, which is a sort of blessing. And then we have the practice when we apply all that we've learned in theory. So that's kind of like the structure for a Reiki level one class. And after that, you can start practicing on yourself. You have a 21-day period where your assignment is to do the protocol on yourself, right? So it's doing there's like a little bit of a meditation and then hands positions. Second level, we start using what we're calling the Reiki symbols, and that's when we learn how to practice distance healing. So a bit of a symbology there. There is a little, it's a little bit, esoteric. It's a little bit magical. That's why, like I said earlier, some people don't actually go to level two. I feel like it's very powerful if you want to go deeper. And then, so those are like the two main levels. Level three is actually when you want to start pursuing it as a teacher.
Mhm.
So for me, level three is really when you've had a lot of experience offering Reiki to a variety of different people, and you'll be able to guide other people. Obviously, it's like that, the master teacher kind of title. It means that
Mhm.
you really kind of earn this level where you can guide other people with it. So in a nutshell, that's the three levels. Yeah.
Nice. Thank you so much, Wendy, for sharing that. And I think as we wrap up this conversation as well, and I will drop all your links if people wants to, learn Reiki and understand what it's all about. I'll share your Wendy's link in the description. And just to wrap up this conversation, like I would love to ask this two questions. First is, if you were to hire like a coach, what area of your growth would you seek help with?
So you mean me personally at this
Yeah.
moment? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so as you know, I'm doing a degree in clinical psychology. So part of my requirements is I actually have to undergo psychoanalysis since I'm going to be offering psychoanalysis. It's kind of a requirement or strongly suggested. So I started working with a therapist. So it's my first time because I've never had enough time in one place to really. I've worked with life coaches a lot because it's like a shorter period of time, but this lady, I've been with her for 2 months and I'm really actually enjoying it. I'm finding it beneficial. I wouldn't have sought her out if it hadn't been a requirement, but now it's really. I see how it fits in, and also, of course, as a teacher and a coach and a healer, it's nice for me to also receive because it's very difficult to sometimes work on yourself that way. So I'm doing that at the moment. In terms of receiving, so I'm doing monthly Reiki shares where
Mm-hmm.
my different students are able to practice on each other. So we had one last week. And so, some of the Reiki practitioners, some of my students were practicing on me, where they were giving Reiki on me, like at the same time. And it felt like all I could think was like, this feels so amazing to receive, Reiki from
Wow.
someone else or someone who always gives and gives. And like, I was thinking, I wish we would have this more often because I was feeling so good. So that's another thing I would do is get Reiki from my other
Mm-hmm.
practitioners that I know. And I think in terms of coaching, I've been working with I have a Bushido teacher
Mm-hmm.
sensei. So again, with him, his approach is very holistic. It's not just physical martial arts. There's a lot of breath work, there's meditation, and a lot of philosophy. So I love working with him. I was able to train with him last year in Mexico, this year in Japan. I used to love going to retreats before I started running my own retreats. I really love, for example, yin yoga. I love going to
Mm-hmm.
I love receiving, what do you call it? Sound healing. It's so nice for me. So, and of course, I'm taking jujitsu at the moment. So, I'm also grateful for my coaches in martial arts. So I think I have a lot.
That's it's really nice. I think it's getting more popular now for people to actually seek help, but I still feel like there's a stigma around it, around asking help, seeking, going to a therapist, having a coach, having a mentor.
That's
And
one of the reasons that I'm
yeah.
taking this course because in the
Hmm.
Philippines, it's
Yeah,
not so common. So
exactly.
I want to really change that. I want to change,
Mm,
and
yeah,
of course, offer a holistic approach.
definitely. Yeah, because for me, I'm like, I train, I get a coach to train me for my workout. So why not get someone who could actually help me manage my thought? Like give me a more
Exactly.
stronger, you know,
That,
thought because that's a lot of the problem, most of it causes a lot of problems in my life. So if I could strengthen the quality of my thought, then that would be amazing. So I don't
it's
think,
different
yeah.
having a professional coming from the outside,
Yeah.
as opposed to your friends, your family, your partner. They have so much at stake. There's an emotional attachment and charge there that makes it very difficult for certain areas to be worked out, right? That's why it can be so beneficial to have that kind of neutral person.
Totally agree. All right. Well, last thing that I would love to ask would be, you know, if you were speaking with someone who wants to take more ownership of their growth and learning, what are some of the resources that you would like to share with them?
Hmm. You mean like online resource things?
Yeah, online resources,
Well,
book.
I mean, for sure. And people, contact me oftentimes, and if they're not ready to invest, because it's kind of obviously there's a financial investment. This is like it's been my full-time job since 2017. I have a lot of free resources on YouTube and also on my podcast. There's a lot of conversations. So they could get started there. And then I think I have a lot of either very affordable or free online kind of meditations, calls, things like that, like the one I mentioned that's happening next week. So, yeah, definitely.
That's amazing. I would love to ask for links of those,
Sure.
podcast or YouTube that you have so that our viewers or people who are interested could, you know, look at it, try it, and eventually, if they want to really go deeper into the practice, then they can contact you. So we'll have all of that in the description. So I guess
Thank you.
that's it. I really enjoyed this conversation, Wendy. I'm getting a lot of learnings just having this conversation. And honestly, I feel so much lighter for myself.
Oh, thank
Like
you.
this takeaway would be, just allowing myself to feel down when I'm feeling down and not resisting it because it's just making it even worse.
I
So
agree.
yeah.
I agree.